fine.
Hello everybody, welcome to another edition of What's Going On. I'm your host, Tom DeAmber. As always, we're very thankful you take the time from your busy day to view our program. My friends, a tremendous amount going on in the world, both foreign and domestically here. It seems that the games of lies and deception and so forth are starting to catch up to the truth. I'm very, very hopeful. I won't say impressed. I am very hopeful that finally the American people will see some sort of true justice against the corporate criminals, government and non-government, that have perpetrated their wares upon the American people. And I found something interesting, and if we could, we're going to start with this. And this was supposed to be a fun thing, but when you really think about this, you see the headline here. Has anyone heard of this altcoin called the USD? That would be the US dollar. I hear it has no cap and isn't backed by anything. Is it a scam? Folks, what this is correlating to is the fact that we have these new crypto coins, if you would. They're called, Bitcoin and others, but Bitcoin being the most popular. And what makes Bitcoin so popular is multiple facets of how it was developed. What does this script mean by, I hear it has no cap? What they're talking about here is, in other words, is it an infinite supply or a finite supply of this particular medium of exchange? Is it something that is going to be printed forever? Or is it something that we're going to print X amount and no more? And here's why that's very, very important. Because just think of this. Supply and demand. The more you have of any entity, I don't care if it's a medium of exchange, if it's gallons of milk, gallons of gasoline, whatever. The more you have of it, the less value it will hold in the market. Now, the value of any medium of exchange you would understand as purchasing power. And what you would know the results of the loss of purchasing power, that term you have come to know as inflation. So what they're asking here is, I hear it has no cap, talking about the Federal Reserve note, the US dollar. Of course, we know if you're watching this program, we do not have dollars. A dollar is 25.8 grains of gold and a 51 ratio of silver. There is no gold, there is no silver backing that medium of exchange in your pocket. You have a Federal Reserve note. And we have read to you many times from our Black's Law Dictionary that money does not encompass debt. What is a note? An acknowledgement of debt. Understand that. So, I hear it has no cap. Does the USD, the Federal Reserve note, have a cap? In other words, they're only going to print this amount to maintain this level of purchasing power? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They print more and more and more on a daily basis, and making the purchasing power of that entity reduced the more they print it. And then here's the second part of this. And it isn't backed by anything. Well, that's true in the sense of money, because money has to hold some kind of intrinsic valued commodity behind it. And as I've explained to you, we have no gold, we have no silver. That's a true dollar. What we do have, though, is something backing this. It's you. You are the co-surety to the interest bond due on each and every one of these facade USDs. And you say, well, how'd that happen, Tom? When did I sign off that I was going to be a co-surety to the debt, to the interest bond of a private for-profit banking corporation called the Federal Reserve? How'd that happen, folks? You were bonded through an instrument called the birth certificate. We've gone over that many, many times. Many times. So what is backing this medium of exchange, my friends, is your sweat equity and your ignorance as to what money is not. And as Henry Ford said back in the 1930s, it is well the American people do not understand our money or banking system, for if they did, I fear there'd be revolution by morning. Now let's look what's made Bitcoin so popular. Does it have a cap? Absolutely. They produced X amount of these entities, no more being produced. That's it. Has it maintained its value? Well, it's not only maintained its value, it has skyrocketed in value. Think of that. Is it backed by anything? You know what it's backed by? It's backed by, one, the Federal Reserve or the IRS or any other alphabet agency from the government can't come and take it from you without going through any court proceeding. Two, they can't get their hands on it because it's digitally secured. Three, it is accepted for other currencies throughout the world at a much improvised, I should say, increased value to the other debt commodities, such as the US dollar. So what's backing this is that it's opposite of what the Federal Reserve note is. There is a cap. No, they can't come take it. Yes, it can be exchanged. The only thing you can't do with it directly is pay your taxes. That's the only thing you can't do. You got to cash it in for the debt instrument known as the Federal Reserve note to pay your taxes to the insolvent corporation, USA Inc., or any of their subsidiaries, state of Vermont, town of, city of, doesn't matter. And that's right, folks. If you're watching this program for the first time, the United States government is a corporation. It was incorporated in 1871 with the Organic Act of 1871. We've read this to you verbatim many times. So, funny little caption here, but boy, does it ring a whole lot of truth. And that's what's made Bitcoin and the others so valuable. And what's made the United States dollar so invaluable, after all, as we reported to you, since December 23rd, 1913 to December 23rd, 2013, first of all, we don't have dollars anymore. In 1913, we did have true dollars. It only took them 20 years, March 9th, 1933, to destroy the most prolific, well-organized, most sought after, most stable medium of exchange in the history of mankind. 20 years. How did they do it? By controlling the issuance of the currency. And every single congressman who's been in, well, not all, there have been others like Louis T. McFadden and Ron Paul, James Traficant, and others who have really tried to educate the American people and vote against the renewing of the Federal Reserve Act, which came up, it was a 100-year program which came up in 2013. Every congressman that signed off on that should be brought up on charges of treason and not doing what they swore in oath to do. Article 1, Section 8 says the Congress will regulate the value thereof and issue the currency. The Coinage Act says dollars are 25.8 gold, 15:1 ratio silver. What happened to all that? You think it's in Fort Knox. John F. Kennedy discovered it wasn't, didn't he? So, yeah, this was meant to be funny. But I'll tell you something. There is some real reasoning behind this caption. And that's why I wanted to present it to you. And I thank Bill for getting on the internet and retrieving that for us. You know, folks, we have gone over all the symbology that's on the Federal Reserve note. what the Federal Reserve is, why it's all in uppercase black ink, why the United States of America is uppercase, why there's two signatories, one's the creditor, one's the debtor. We turn it over, we see novus ordo seclorum. Novice, if you're a novice in something, what are you? You're new. Ordo is Latin for order, and seclorum is where, in Latin, where we get the word secular from, which literally means of the world, new order of the world, right there on that medium of exchange that you believe these people don't exist. A nuit coeptus, God's anointing and an announcement. Here we are, in your face. And we also went over the crest on the other side of the face, on the crest of the $1 bill, where the Babylonian deity known as Moloch is happily, proudly staring at you. And who was Moloch? Moloch was the god that the Babylonians used to sacrifice their children to. Nothing changes, my friends. It's the same people. Okay, let us continue. Interesting quote here. This is from Edward Herman. This quote is, I believe, my friends, when I got this was 1973, but it was the early 70s. Listen to this. The propaganda system. Let's stop right there. What is the propaganda system? First one, mainstream media. Second one, schools, public schools, the public fools, the public indoctrination systems. And number three of the 501c3 IRS corporations, you know, is the churches. That's the gist that makes up the propaganda system in this country. Let us continue with this quote. The propaganda system allows the U.S. leadership to commit crimes without limit and with no suggestion of misbehavior or criminality. In fact, major war criminals like Henry, real name Heinz, Kissinger, appear regularly on TV to comment on the crimes of the derivative butchers. Who is giving the orders to this propaganda system and all this criminality and misbehavior? Well, that's very easy to answer, isn't it? Who controls it all, my friends? Amschel Rothschild said it the best. Give me control of a nation's currency. I care not who makes its laws. Who is the Federal Reserve, my friends? The international bankers, the same bankers that are bringing down the pigs, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece, and Spain, the same bankers that are bringing down the United States. You think about this, my friends. There's what historically speaking, history, geography, culture, what do all these countries have in common? Nothing, or very little, I should say. You may be able to find some things out of hundreds of years that these countries have some kind of cultural common, I would say, a common junction with each other. You may find some, but wholly speaking, all these countries have nothing, zero in common with each other, historically speaking. So what makes them all at the same time collapsing in the same manner? It's because they're all controlled by the international bankers. The European Union, the Federal Reserve, all the rest of them, all controlled by the international bankers. And that's the key linchpin here. But this gentleman, Mr. Herman, is correct. The propaganda system allows the U.S. leadership to commit crimes without limit and with no suggestion of behavior or criminality. Absolutely true. Happens every day. And I'm hoping now, I have some hope developing, that the tools that are available to the American people by the government, which have been used as depressors and suppressors of the American people for so long, are now going to come to the task that they were initially put in place for. And that is for the benevolence and protection of our life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and property. We are yet to find out. We have a lot of criminals out there, like this man, this scumbag right here, Mueller. Yet again, the 13th month, excuse me, well, going on 12 months, the 12-month circus of going after, first it was you know, PP Gate. Old Trump was over there in Russia with prostitutes getting peed on. Didn't work out. Matter of fact, turns out he wasn't even in Russia. Oh, and by the way, who delivered that dossier? Senator John McCain. Thank you very much. Another scumbag criminal. You know, how come John McCain is allowed to go in office and when he was part of the Keating Five? How'd that happen? How is it that so many of them are criminals? Bonnie Frank gets caught running a little boy child brothel out of his congressional office. How is he not only not in prison, but then promoted as the banking chairman of the finance committee? Why is that? Because they had him right where they wanted him. They had him right where they wanted him. He knew he was protected as long as he went along and did what the bankers wanted him to do. And now, as I reported to you 2 weeks ago, now we find out that Mueller, of course, I reported this to you about a year ago, that Mueller, the same guy who spent over $3.5 million investigating Trump for this supposed campaign interference, which now we find out didn't happen at all. On the Trump side, all the interference was happening on whose side? The Democratic side. Folks, the Russians wanted Hillary Clinton to be president. Don't you understand? This guy Mueller had already personally delivered samples of the uranium to the Russians, personally, so the Russians could test the uranium that the ranchers were getting kicked off their property for, being put in prison for, and being murdered for, as we've demonstrated to you last week. Who was the FBI director when all this was going on? Another scumbag. I hate using this language, folks, but I can't call them gentlemen. I can't use the word honorable when describing these people. They have totally gone against their oaths. They have turned in their own nation for personal greed and depravity. Russia wanted Hillary Clinton in. They had already set up everything they wanted through the Clinton Foundation to get the State Department to do what they want. They had Hillary Clinton in her pocket because her pocket's awful big. It accepts millions of dollars at a time. They didn't want Trump, a man of no political background, no understanding what he's going to do, what his tendencies are. Can't buy him. Comey and Mueller have been troubleshooters for the Clintons since the days of the Rose Law Firm back in 1995 and 6. They were involved with protecting the CIA drug running, particularly cocaine, in the 80s and 90s in Mena, Arkansas. They were all involved with it. When the two young boys were murdered because they witnessed the drops, they were all protected, weren't they? When this fine American, I call him the American cowboy, Lavoy Finnegan, who has his granddaughter on his shoulders here, that's the gentleman, folks, that we showed you last week, through forensic evidence that was very well done, that this gentleman was murdered and unarmed. And now we have FBI agents who have openly admitted that they fabricated statements and or omitted information. They not only lied by telling lies, they said distruths by omitting information. Has anyone gone to jail for that? Has there been an open investigation about the Lavoy Finnegan murder? A real investigation. Not a stamp it down, here we go, we're done. No. No. There has not. Lavoy Finnegan, you see, folks, what happened with all this, just to be real quick, was that when they were taking all the property from the ranches in Nevada, Cliven Bundy asked people to help him. The U.S. government was openly confiscating and murdering his herd, his livelihood. Even though his family and himself have had grazing and watering rights with the state of Nevada since the I would say 1870s. That's not quite mid, it's a little bit past mid. 1870s. Think of this. No warrants, no paperwork, no courts. We're just going to show up, kick your door in, take your livelihood, murder everything in front of you, confiscate your land, your private land. Of course, we don't have private land no more, huh? Senate Document 43 made sure of that. Your private land, and then take all your neighbor's land. Oh, and Senator Harry Reid and his son Raul made millions of dollars through all this. And first investigative work took us to a Chinese solar company. They wanted all that land for this Chinese solar company. That was the ploy, my friends. That was just the ploy. What they were really after was subterranean. That was the uranium that was delivered by Mueller, who is now investigating Trump on trumped-up charges with no evidence and no legal protocols at the cost of millions of dollars to you. That was the uranium, my friends, that Mueller delivered to the Russians. And this man was murdered in Oregon. So how did the Bundys, etc., wind up in Oregon? Because what happened was when the Hammond family was being threatened by the feds, BLM again, that's not Black Lives Matter, that's Bureau of Land Management. They work the same way. They're both financed by the same people. And they have the same tactics. Only one has a nice shiny badge to show you like they got real authority, and the other just has mask over their face. Actually, they both have mask over their face. So the only difference is, my friends, one has a shiny badge and the others don't. Same tactics. They're thugs. So what they were after was the uranium, you see, because the Russians had already paid the Clinton Foundation to get the State Department to make the arrangements for the uranium deal. And this whole time, the big ploy is Trump, the Russians interfered in the election for Trump and PBGate. Think of that. While Trump is finding children as little as 3 months old being sold and placed in cages for child sex slavery to all the names that we've covered, what's taking place? Who's being put to the task of this? Nobody. But what has taken place, my friends, is people like me, people like the people behind the camera, throughout this country have not let this settle. We won't stop. Folks, we've had enough. I hope you've had enough. How much can the American people swallow and regurgitate? This poor family lost their father. So again, the question becomes, when the Hammonds see we're losing their land, placed in double jeopardy through the court system, and they found out that there was uranium there in Oregon also, the Bundys and Lavoy Finnegan and a small group of people went to the Hammonds in hopes that they would be able to help them. Well, the Hammonds were completely intimidated, 100% scared for their lives, intimidated. They didn't want the help. They were too scared to accept it. The senior Hammond actually said, I'm old, I'm paraphrasing, I'm old and I may spend the rest of my life in jail, but at least they won't come and kill me today. Or my family. That's called intimidation, my friends. When you know you're in the right, when you know you've done nothing wrong, but yet you'll accept the consequence because you're completely intimidated. And the other end of that is they have no faith in the just us system, which I totally understand. So what happens is the Bundys and Lavoie, they go there in hopes that they can help the Hammonds. The Hammonds say, no, they don't want the help. We're intimidated. We're scared for our lives, blah, blah, blah. But what happens? The mainstream media portrayed to you that not even the neighbors wanted them there. So they go to a wildlife refuge, and I believe it was for 41 days, and they stay there. I don't consider that to be a good move. But the feds they were complacent in the sense of, okay, we got a little bit of Scrabble here, and we can see that the Hammonds aren't going to get involved. There's going to be no big rally, all that. So we'll let these people stay cold and we'll go from there. But what took place, my friends, is that people, including law enforcement, particularly sheriffs, from adjoining counties said no. They said no. We're not going to accept this. So now you started to get the local people were meeting with Lavoie, Finicum, and the Bundys and others. And they were presenting their case about the uranium, about the land deals, and so forth. As a matter of fact, the day that Lavoie Finicum was murdered and all the other passengers were supposed to be murdered, they were on their way to go to the following county to meet hundreds of people. Hundreds were in attendance waiting for them. Hundreds. And the sheriff from the other county had helped organize this meeting. He was there. And that sheriff was very, very much a constitutionalist. He had been in touch and had done a lot of the research of Sheriff Mack. So this is when the feds started to get aggressive, because they couldn't take another embarrassing stand down like what happened in Nevada. So Lavoie Finicum, if you watch the film we presented, he yells to them, we're going to meet the sheriff in the other county. They already knew that. That's why they set up the ambush they did and murdered him unarmed. This, my friend, is a 71-year-old Cliven Bundy who spent over exactly 700 days in prison as a political prisoner. The judge, Navarro, as we reported to you, allowed over 3,000 pages of documents not to be presented to the defense, allowed testimony blocked by the defense. They wouldn't allow the jury to use it. And also would not allow the defense to use the communication transcripts between the BLM and other government agencies that were there. Why would she do all that? Because she's part of the Just Us system. But then we reported to you that Bradley Lee Dean, who was a news reporter with Northwest Liberty News, got a tip from a source that 2 FBI agents had presented Judge Navarro some criminal activity that they had on her. And they wanted her to start being a true constitutional judge. And Judge Navarro was like, you could see she got wishy-washy, but then she got the word that the Just Us Department under President Trump, Jeff Sessions, was looking into the court proceedings of this case, and everything changed, my friends. Everything changed. Judge Navarro, astonishingly, became a constitutionalist judge, at least for this one case. And now she has ruled with prejudice that all charges against these defendants were dropped, and that if the injustice brought upon these people was so egregious that there can't be a retrial. See, that used to be called double jeopardy, but now the government, which has an infinite source of money to bring you to court, they don't care if they spend $7 million and you got to spend $100,000. How do I use them terms? Because I just got done studying a court case where the gentleman spent $125,000 and the Justice Department spent $6.8 million. Did they care? Hell no, it's your dime. They don't care. It would be different if these prosecuting attorneys add some kind of liability, but they don't. Zero. The judges don't have liability. Nothing. The judges, you go into the judges, my friends, the judges are getting the money from the proceedings that you're being tried on. Think of that. Is that judge going to be unbiased and true to law? Absolutely not. Congratulations to the Bundys. And congratulations to the 2 FBI agents that put the pressure on Judge Navarro to make her stand to her oath. Okay, my friends, I want to read something to you, and then we're going to sort of break down what these gentlemen are talking about. Okay, this is James W. King, and I'm going to read this to you pretty much verbatim. I'm running out a little bit of time here, but let's go on. In March of 2013 in Savannah, Georgia, a 13-month-old white baby boy was shot and murdered in his stroller by a black thug. And you're saying, come on, Tom. A black thug went up to a 13-month-old white boy in a stroller and dinged him? Yeah. No way, I would have heard about that. No. You would have heard about that if a 13-month-old black boy was shot and murdered in his stroller by a white thug. That's when you would have heard about it. Let me continue. In March of 2013 in Savannah, Georgia, a 13-month-old white baby boy was shot and murdered in his stroller by a black thug. This incident will never be a continuing national news story the size of the Zimmerman-Martin incident, which, by the way, remember that? Hands up, blah, blah, blah. Oh, my God, it didn't happen. Remember the NFL players? Hands up, blah, blah, blah. Never happened, folks. Never happened. Why? It doesn't fit the narrative of the progressive socialist left-wing media. Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton can't make any money or political points from this sick, tragic shooting. No rap stars will lay in a stroller and have their picture taken by the useful idiots in the media. There won't be any protests, marches, riots, or demands for justice for the 13-month-old baby white boy and his parents by the NAACP, the Rainbow Coalition, the Democratic Party. Barack Hussein Obama, who was president then, was CEO of the insolvent corporation, won't call the parents to comfort them. Nobody will call a black basketball player who came out that he's gay. He wouldn't call veterans who were being killed in action, but he publicly calls a professional black basketball player because he openly came out and said he's homosexual. Let me continue. Barry Soetoro, you know him as Barack Hussein Obama, won't call the parents to comfort them, nor will he claim this poor, innocent 13-month-old victim as his honorary son. Pierce Moron, that's Pierce Morgan, this guy's funny, won't have the parents on for a fawning interview, and no NFL players will predict that the hood will soon take care of those 2 murderous thugs. Calls for gun control will be useless because I'm certain the gun used in the crime was obtained illegally anyway. If anything, this will be written off as a failure of the system. The two murderers will be portrayed as sad victims of a biased system. If only we'd given them more money. If only there had been a midnight basketball program paid for by the federal government. If only the two murderers had been enrolled in a Head Start program and fed free breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. If only ad nauseum. And I can certainly predict that our sorry excuse for an attorney general, who then was Eric Holder, will come nowhere near this case. And he did not. There will be no FBI investigation, there was not, to see if this crime was racially motivated. There will be no calls for hate crime charges. No T-shirts with the baby's cute picture will be handed out to the non-existent protest. Maybe if we started swiftly and publicly executing these punks who rob, terrorize, and murder innocent people, the message would get through that we're done with tolerance for violent criminals. Let us continue. It barely made the local news. If two KKK members had shot a 13-month-old black baby in a stroller, it would still be every day's national news 5 years later. Shopton and Jackson would undoubtedly claim that the mother was a racist and that the angelic minority lads were merely standing their ground against a potential baby bigot born with the stain of slavery on his soul. Do you know what percentage of black people have ancestry that was involved in slavery? And I'm not talking about the black people who owned black slaves. Oh, you didn't know that, did you? You didn't know that the biggest slave owner was black, did you? You didn't know that slavery has encompassed all races and cultures, and you didn't know that it was black tribes in Africa selling black other tribe members to white merchants for slavery, did you? You didn't know that indentured servants had a higher death rate than black slaves, did you? Well, think of that. If I own you for life, and I own this person over here for 4 to 7 years, who am I going to feed, clothe, take care of, and educate? The one I own for life. The one I own for 4 to 7 years, I'm putting nothing into. I am going to extract every bit of sweat equity I can out of that person. Think of it, my friends. Let us continue. America's news media and talk radio are full of so-called conservatives who constantly whine about the double standard, begging ignorant thugs and race baiters to understand the suitable Western concept of fairness. Argument requires that both sides abide by some rules of conduct and logic. You can't debate with a shark. It wants to eat you. Arguments based on logic, statistics, and pleas for understanding are as lost as on these hate-filled, hungry predators. For years, the black community in Baltimore has been under assault by 4 Confederate monuments. Let me read that again. For years, the black community in Baltimore has been under assault by 4 Confederate monuments. These monuments were relentless in their destruction of the black family, as over 70% of black children are now born out of wedlock. So terrified were the black inhabitants of Baltimore by these monuments that over 60% of black men in the city could not work a job and found comfort in fathering numerous children with numerous women that they could not feed and or support. Just knowing that the monuments were there made black school children have the lowest test scores in the nation, and many turned to drugs to relieve the sting of the monument's presence. Worst of all, the mere presence of the monuments caused death. Not being able to handle the hate and violence that the monuments represent, the black males in the city took to killing each other by the thousands. Just in the last 2 years alone, in Baltimore alone have murdered over 500 of their own. Praise be to God and for the wisdom of the mayor. It is a new dawn for black Baltimoreans. The shackles have been removed, and all that can be said is free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we're free at last. Now that we've gotten rid of those old Southern monuments, we will all get a good education. Stop having babies out of wedlock. Stop doing drugs. Stop stealing. And stop killing one another. Hallelujah, hallelujah, we will be free at last. Just look at what the progress the blacks in Orleans have already made since them old Confederate monuments have quit assaulting black folks. A lot of satire there, but boy does that hit home. And by the way, what's going on since New Orleans has removed the Confederate monuments? More murdering, more drug using, more thieving, more you paying out of your pocket for all this. Let us continue. Many people believe that crime is a product of poverty and lack of advantages. However, the District of Columbia, District of Criminals, which enjoys the highest average annual salaries. Ooh, we talked about that some months ago, didn't we? What is it in Washington, D.C. that the highest salaries per capita are in Washington, D.C.? Is it that they have a Silicon Valley there and they're producing all this new manufacturing and all this new research and development and they're developing all this new ways like for the economies to prosper? No. The only thing Washington, D.C. produces, my friends, is bureaucracy and authoritarianism and deception. That's the product of Washington, D.C. that makes Washington, D.C. the highest salaries per capita in the nation. Because all the criminals go there to be part of the game. You got it? Let us continue. District of Columbia, highest salary, average annual salaries per capita. The nation in just about every category, but also leads the nation in just about every category of crime, including murder, robbery, aggravated assault, and vehicle theft. Washington, D.C. also has the country's strictest gun control laws, highest police costs per capita, highest ratio of police and correctional officers per citizen, and the highest rate of incarceration. Its permanent population is over 80% black. West Virginia, on the other hand, which has the nation's lowest crime rate, suffers from chronic poverty and the highest unemployment in the United States. But it has the fewest police per capita. It's number one in citizen safety. But guess what? It's poor, the poorest. It has the fewest cops. But guess what? West Virginia is over 96% white. Am I a racist? No. I'm a realist. These are statistics, my friends. Let's continue. Let cities like Detroit, Philadelphia, Chicago, Baltimore, Kansas City, Birmingham, Cleveland, St. Louis, Oakland, Newark, Washington, D.C., etc., 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 stand as a monument to the accomplishment of blacks and their civil rights leaders. Let us celebrate the over 50% illiteracy rates amongst black children, or the 64% dropout rate nationally amongst black students, or the IQs of American blacks are over 20 points on average below those of American whites. Let us revel in black crime statistics that show 64% of all violent crime is committed by blacks, 53% of all rapes, 74% of all murders, or that a black person is 56 times more likely to attack a white person than a white person to attack a black person. I didn't say 56%, I said 56 times. Let us celebrate the black family where 72% of all black children are born to single mothers. Let us dance in the streets and throw our arms up in the air with joy to celebrate that 1 out of 4 black males between the ages of 17 and 49 are either in prison, on parole, or on probation. Let us all giggle and laugh as the trillions of dollars spent since 1964 to uplift blacks and level the playing field, only to realize these startling facts and statistics. We could have spent the money to cure cancer, feed all of the world's hungry, but alas, all we have to show for our effort and sacrifice is crime, corruption, violence, hatred of whites, and anything, not just whites, but even blacks that are in a culture of decency and decay. I think this would be a wonderful opportunity to pause for a moment and give thanks for the great contributions of the black community to our society. Their peaceful and generous nature makes them ideal neighbors, lending testimony to their exceptional family values and parenting skills unrivaled by any other culture. Their commitment to academia and excellence enriches our schools and serves as an example to all who hope to achieve prominence as a people. Real estate values are fueled by the mix of African Americans into an area due to their caring and respectful nature of their communities. An example of all they have achieved through their enthusiasm for self-improvement, hard work, and a reliance can-do nature. Without their industrious and creative drive, we would be poorer as a nation. This is a class of, I want to back up here. There is a, because you're not going to believe who wrote this, listen to this. There is a class of colored people who make a business of keeping the wrongs and the hardships of the black race before the public. Having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles, they have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partly because they want sympathy, but mostly because it pays. Some of these people do not want the blacks to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. Blacks are only 14% of the population. I'm sorry, that's pure. They're 19.6% mixed. So I'll give them the 20%. 20% population in America, but they are committing 75% of the crime in America. The Mexican illegals are doing most of the other 25% and are catching up with the blacks. Yes, there are many blacks that are working and abiding by the law and performing responsibly. And I will tell you something, my friends, some of them are my friends. I was brought up with them and they're still my friends today. And they have a harder time accepting what's going on in the black community than anybody because it represents them. The same for Mexicans. But overall, these two groups require strict management, and if they turned loose in society, as they have been since the 1960s, they commit vast amounts of crime. Okay, I've got into a lot of the crime statistics before, so I'm going to leave this alone for the sake of time. I want to read to you something from Star Parker. Star Parker is a noted African-American female author and former president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. Calling on her own experience, Parker writes, "A benevolent United States welcomed mostly poor black Americans onto the government plantation. Instead of solving the economic problems, government welfare, socialism created more monstrous moral and spiritual problems. The legacy of American socialism is our blighted inner cities, dysfunctional inner city schools, and broken black families." I applaud this black woman. She's got it right on the nose. Let us continue. The threat to liberty in the 21st century is the same it has been throughout mankind's history. That threat is the use of coercive powers of government under the color of law to take the rightful property of some people and give it to the others, in the forcibly imposition of the will of one group of the people on another. Such acts are most often done in the name of good, benevolence, explain the ugliest portions of human history. The question is whether America will degenerate into what has been mankind's standard fare throughout history. We have yet to see the kind of arbitrary control, abuse, and violation of basic human rights seen elsewhere. But if we ask ourselves, which way are we heading? Tiny steps at a time, albeit, towards more personal liberty or towards greater government control over our lives, the answer would ambiguously be the latter. Totally agree. We Americans face an awesome challenge and responsibility because if liberty dies here, it is probably dead for all places. This is another black person that wrote this. He's a Dr. Walton Williams. This is 3 black people. This isn't white people saying this, folks. Let us continue. Author Robert Hitt Neal, black author, tells attending Tennessee Mountain Writers Conference years ago with several other authors. Among them was Alex Haley, celebrated black author of Roots, who later admitted Roots was a fiction and not in fact. Of course, we all know that. Or did you? Watching a TV news show, a group of them watched a demonstration in a southern state against the rebel flag incorporated into the state's flag. The very next, by the way, my friends, and the now UN Secretary of State, Nikki Haley, was the governor that removed that flag. She's a globalist. In a southern state against the rebel flag incorporated into that state's flag. The very next report covered a famine in Africa. Graphic images showed dead bodies, starving children with distended tummies and running noses, and dying people covered with fleas, too weak to brush them away. Mr. Haley intoned in a serious voice, "Every time an American black sees a story like that, they should find a Confederate flag and kiss it." He then pointed to the TV screen and continued, "Because they would be me and my descendants except for American slavery. I thank God that my family and I are here instead of Africa. But no slave was ever brought to America under the Confederate flag. It was the flags of European nations and the northern colonies, particularly states like Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York." Folks, I will tell you right now, Newport, Rhode Island had more black slaves brought to it because it was part of the Rum Triangle. Let me continue. But no slave was ever brought to America under the Confederate flag. It was the flags of European nations and northern colonies, later the states and the U.S. flag, the stars and stripes, that brought them from Africa to America. Again, in states like Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York. And who said that? Alex Haley, the author of the fiction Roots. Now let's get into some crime statistics. These are crime statistics for 2013. I took these from the FBI crime data, and I hope you can see these. Stanley, we could bring the camera over here so we can get this in the background. Thank you. Okay, murder and manslaughter rate. You can go along with me. Blacks. Now don't forget, they make up 19.6% of the population. More blacks did more murdering than any other race. Let's continue. Robbery. Blacks on top again. Rape. Blacks on top again. Aggravated assault. Blacks on top again. Murder theft. Blacks on top again. Prostitution, blacks on top again. Weapons violations, blacks on top again. Now, that was 1 year. Let's go back another year. Look at this graph, my friends. This is 2014. I would present 2017 to you, but the FBI hasn't released it yet. That'll probably be around April. But look at this graph. Murder, blacks again, different year. Robbery, blacks on top again. Rape, blacks on top again. Felonious assault, blacks on top again. Grand larceny, blacks on top again. Shootings, blacks on top again. Look at the shootings, folks. It's off the graph. It's off the graph. So this isn't being a racist. This is telling you there is a real problem in the black community which affects us every day, and we're the ones paying for it, not only in blood, but in sweat equity. It's time we made a change. My friends, we're very thankful you took the time to watch our program. We always close in asking you to seek truth, obtain knowledge, manifest kindness to your fellow man. And we always close in reminding you that your government is your responsibility. We thank you for watching.
Can't believe we are all so blind. I can't believe we are all so blind. Well, the truth is very simple, very hard to find.